Okay, we're ready to go.
Okay, thank you. Good morning, everybody. I'd like to call this meeting to order at 10:01 a.m. I'll read the Land Acknowledgement Act. The city of Thorold is situated on treaty land. This land is steeped in the rich history of the First Nations, such as the Hattah-Waddamrock, the Haudenosaunee, and the Anishinaabe, including the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation. There are many First Nations, Métis, and Inuit people from across Turtle Island that live and work in Niagara today. The city of Thorold stands with all Indigenous people, past and present, in promoting the wise stewardship of the lands on which we live. I'll go to item number 3 now, declaration of interest. Are there any? Okay, seeing none. Item number 4, adoption of the agenda. Can I get a mover and a seconder to adopt the agenda? Moved by Leslie and seconded by Joe Atkinson. I'll call the question. All those in favor? Opposed, if any? And that is approved unanimously. Item number 5, adoption of the minutes. Justin, do I adopt these both as a single motion, or do they have to be separate?
They can be done together.
Okay. Can I get a motion, a mover and a seconder to adopt the minutes from the March 1st, 2024 meeting and the April 5th, 2024 meeting? Moved by Mark and seconded by Linda Borland. Okay, thank you. I'll call the question. All those in favor? Opposed, if any? And that is carried. Item number 6, correspondence. Is there any items of correspondence, Justin?
Through you, Mr. Chair, there is no items of correspondence.
Okay. This is moving along nice and quick. Item number 7, working group updates. I suspect that this really wouldn't be a working group update, but the Earth Day, if I could call on Jacob Tedesco to provide an overview of how the Earth Day event went in terms of participation. And it's all yours, Jacob.
Thank you, Joe, Mr. Chair. Yeah, the Earth Day event was very successful, I'd say. We had four different speakers at the event that each came in to speak on various topics. We had just over around a dozen vendors at the event. At the event, we were able to collect e-waste in partnership with Habitat for Humanity. There was some food donations that were collected and given to community care. We also had the garbage event cleanup that ran throughout the downtown core, and we did have a decent number of people to turn out for that. Considering it was such a cold day outside, it was still good to see some people coming out for that event portion of the event. Aside from that, there was also Gulds Nurseries who gave away some trees to the public. That was very successful and I think helped draw a lot of people to the event. And then the region was also there selling bins, as well as a couple other vendors providing information on their initiatives. Overall, we had just around a little bit over 100 people at the event. And I think hopefully we're looking next year to possibly move it up to Canada Games Park and have it again.
Okay. Any idea how much the food that was donated for community care? Like usually they calculate what was donated by weight. Did they calculate that at all?
You know what? I didn't receive a number back from them. I looked at the bin at the end of the day and it was about a quarter full. It looked like there's maybe 4 or 5 people that had kind of dropped off like a bag of a couple things.
Okay.
And kind of some loose items in it as well.
Okay.
So yeah, I don't know if anyone saw the bin that I'm referring to. It was kind of their typical 55-gallon like container size bin. So
Okay.
yeah, I think it was about a quarter full that we had at the
Okay.
end of the
Thank
day.
you.
Yeah, no
Thanks.
problem.
Yeah, it was a pretty good event. I talked to quite a few people. For the first time, I think we did okay. There was some hiccups along the way getting the initiative actually going forward. So by the time we were ready to move on, quite a few of the vendors are already committed to other events. But all in all, I think we did good. It's a good starting point. Is there any comments or questions that any of the committee members have for Jacob? Leslie.
I don't want to be negative about it, but we need to sit down and go through the event from the planning stage on. If we want to have a better event next year, there are a number of things that happened that shouldn't have. And partly it was because we started planning so late. And part was, and the fact, one of the things we should be doing today is looking at a calendar for next year and getting a date. And so we can write a sponsored letter for vendors a year in advance. If we do it now and we get a date, there's more of a chance of the large, because we had a big list of vendors. That wasn't a problem. It was the problem that they had already committed themselves. I mean, Joe's been doing these every weekend for ages now, and they do that in advance so they don't run into the problems we ran into. The other thing is, if we want to attract a large group of people that are environmentally conscious, and there are a lot of them in Thorold and around Thorold, we need to have a speaker that they identify with, that they want to come and hear. That was one of the questions, that and the sound and the lighting in the arena was a little bit of a problem, but it was more so that there wasn't anyone that I didn't say who, and we shouldn't be able to do that. We should know the audience well enough and Earth Day and what it means to know who would attract more people. But our main problem was we were in it too late this year. And I think it's going to succeed over the next few years, but it's a learning process. And if you don't deal with the negatives now, you keep making the same, you create the same negatives the next time you do it. So it might be wise to sit down at a smaller meeting and just go through the things that we each had a problem with in organizing it. But I would like us to look at the calendar for 2025 today and pick a date, pick a Saturday, something that we can develop a flyer about that we can distribute over and over and over again, so that the audience that is going to all these, because they're all going to them, we can gather them in and have them as our audience as well.
Okay, thank you, Leslie. I really appreciate your comments. And if I can just say something, and I don't want to be pointing fingers here, but I made a presentation to the Community Events Committee in May. I believe it was about the second week of May. And this wasn't something, and I had scheduled Ava Salter, who was our vice chair of the committee at the time, to be part of this meeting. And this really wasn't, the idea wasn't for the Environment Committee to be hosting any kind of event, because the Community Events Committee was supposed to be responsible for organizing events hosted by the city of Thorold. And my discussion that I had with Matthew Trenum at the time and Stephanie Jarvis, who was Community Services, I just put forward the proposal that the city of Thorold host an Earth Day event. So this goes back into May. And I met with Marcia Coppola, who was the chair of the committee, and Tony Vandermas was the vice chair. And Tony had some suggestions at that time about reaching out to a couple of the other committees, the Lake Gibson Corridor Group, the library, the TCAG, and see what they can suggest. So to meet with all those groups, I wouldn't have been able to do it before the next Community Events Committee meeting, which was going to be June. So I met with all of them and got a lot of positive feedback from all the committees. And I also, on my own time, reached out to a couple of organizations like the MPCA, the Region, Habitat for Humanity. And when I finally went back to the Community Events Committee, which was July 5th, and I did a presentation to them, and I talked to them about what can be done. And by then I'm thinking, we're already into July, and like Leslie, you and I know that planning is really crucial to having a successful event. So I did the presentation to the Community Events Committee, and they kind of blew me off. They asked me what I wanted from them, and I said, well, I was under the understanding that you were to be the group responsible for putting together this event, and which they didn't want anything to do it other than support the motion that I had. So it went to council. So then August 1st, I did a presentation to council. Same thing. And the council was really in favor of it. Ken Sentence had already put forward a motion to council at the end of May that the city should host a tree giveaway / rain barrel sale event. So this would all tie in. Some of the comments from the councilors, Mike DeVitis really thought it was a great idea, especially if there was some organizations that were representing youth, like the school boards or Brock University or anything like that. Councillor D'Angela thought it was a great idea, and that there should be some seed money set aside for startup of this that should be discussed at budget time. So in the meantime, this went to staff, and I waited for several months for staff to, respond to me and find out, like, where are we going with this? And it wasn't until our December meeting where I asked Justin, what's going on with this? And he suggested that I get in touch with Jeff Holman. So this is what happened from May of 2023 until December. Right then, we're behind the 8 ball. So there was nothing really to do. And then we found out in January that the Earth Day event wasn't a line item on the budget talk. So there was no money had been set aside. So it didn't happen until about March 19th, I think. There was a discussion to take some money out of the Earth Day cleanup event to provide some seed money for the event, the trees and advertising and some staff time that would be allocated to this event. So we're like, now that we've gone through this first year, it's going to be a cakewalk with having Jacob on board. So that's what I'm going to say right now. I see Justin is got his hand up, and I think I should go to him before you, Leslie.
So yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. So yeah, your timeline sounds correct. The one tricky thing that I found was that the motion from council was to refer it to budget time. So staff really couldn't do too much until they know if they were even going to get a budget for it, because you could plan everything, put everything together, have the event ready to go, and then it says, well, there's no money. So I know that was a tricky part, that the budget was later, of course, into February, and then you get it into March, and then it's a month away. But like you said, this year should hopefully, or coming into next year, should be better, because we've done it before. Money will hopefully be put aside, and you have this great special event coordinator here who's going to help you out with everything. Jacob's on it full time, so that's always helpful as well. So.
Okay, thank you for the little bit of clarification there, Justin. Thank you. Leslie, I'm going to go with you now.
The basic problem is that this event needs to be run by a citizens group with the city participating. That's how we do all our events. We don't look for funding for staff. We do a lot of the things that Jacob had to do, and we've done them so often with so many different types of events that we're not reinventing the wheel every time it happens. We've got a long vendor list. We know who to call. I said to Jacob at one point, did you recall the vendors when they didn't respond to the email or whatever? And he said, no, we don't do that. And I understand that, just like I understand what Justin was saying. Of course, if you're going to ask for a budget of council, staff needs to know what time they can dedicate to that. When you have it run differently, where another body's running it or organizing it, and everybody else is a participant. I mean, there's a role for the city, of course there's a role. There's a role for all of us. But if you get that wrong, what we would have done and what we've done in the past with events that we've run in Thorold is if a vendor doesn't call back, and although the timing was really bad this time, and it was nobody's fault at all, it was just the way it played out, we would call them personally because we know them personally. So if they said, oh, I don't know, this is a new event, how many people, what do you think? If they know the people that are organizing it and they've been to events where it's been successful, they will come on. If you just send them a letter from the city and they've already got something else that they could do, they might not. And I think that was one of our problems, that we weren't using the way that a citizen group would organize this event. We were trying to fit it into a model that's a political model, and it has all these steps that you have to go through each and every time. We need to talk about that and decide what roles each group would play, because we work with the library, the Thorold Community Activities Center, the Age-Friendly Committee, the Seniors Association, and we run those events, and there are talents in each one of those groups, and we need to draw on them to help us make the second one an amazing success.
Okay.
I don't like being negative about it, but there are ways of recovering and doing a great job next year.
No, your comments are very much appreciated, because this is something that, like as a first-time event, we're always learning. I've participated in quite a few as a vendor for about 6 of the last 7 years. I think there was one COVID year that I didn't. And I went to a couple were hosted by cities. One was Oakville and one was Hamilton. And I have to tell you that they were the superior events I went to. There was a couple that were private organizations that hosted an Earth Day event, and those ones tend to be heavy on crafts, and some of the vendors really didn't fit in. But having said that, they had good attendance numbers. They were organizations that already had good followers, so they were creating their own Earth Day event with the theme that they wanted to move forward with. And I realize that every year Earth Day does have a specific theme they go for, and this is how we have to try to find our audience, what's important to them and what they're going to attend. So it can be real hardcore, high level environmental issues, or it can be medium, or it can be softcore, like some of the events that I've gone to. Leslie, comments?
I think a combination of that, Joe, works really well. But I'd like to point out one more negative thing. When you walk in as an environmentalist or somebody that's environmentally conscious, you want to do something, you want to participate, you want to teach your children what sort of attitude you should have about the environment. When you walk into an arena in Thorold and the first vendor is walkers, you immediately say, well, they're in the business of garbage collection. I was at the hearing for the public, for the first hearing for the garbage disposal in the quarry. And their business is, if nobody makes any garbage, they don't have business. And that's how some people look at them, especially those that have been around for a long time, worried about environmental issues in Thorold. So right from the beginning, when I walked in, I mean, I just don't tell them my name anymore. I've dealt with Walker Brothers for years, but you have to look at it from the perspective of your audience. The fact that if you get less garbage and more recycling, Walker Brothers loses money. And that's really hard to defend as the first thing you see when you walk into an event like that. We have to think about things like that. There's a role for walkers, of course, there's a role, but they shouldn't be the front and center, the big corporation that wants to take all the garbage from Ontario and whatever they told you at their open house about expanding that. They have been taking Toronto garbage. That was part of the 1984 environmental assessment hearing, was the allowance for them to bring garbage from Toronto to their site to make money. So it's just another hint that I thought of during the day and wrote it down. And then a number of people said, why is Walker here? And I said, well, they do manage recycling some things. So yeah, but they shouldn't have looked like they were front and center of our Earth Day.
Good comments. Great. No, it's a great perspective that you put on it. And yeah, I agree with what you're saying. Yeah, very good. Any other well, Linda, you've got your hand up.
Okay, first of all, I'd like to congratulate the committee and Jacob for a first event. I think that it was a last minute event because of the budget, but we should be able to plan, as Leslie suggested now, for another year. But it is up to the city and the community events. We are an advisory committee, and we certainly have some skills that we could contribute to this event. But I would like to say thank you, Jacob. We had, as you said, 100 participants. So we have 100 more participants to advertise and talk about the next event. And so you have some advocates, community advocates for the event for another year. So if you 100 people talk to 10 people, then you're going to have 1,000 participants or so in the next year. So I think it will grow and it will prosper. And if we listen carefully, as suggested, to the community will find out where they are most interested in, what they are most interested in talking about. And maybe it would be Joe's project of the parks and the trails and having a provincial or national park in our area. That would be wonderful as well. So we can promote that promote that idea in on a day like Earth Day to celebrations. So it's just my comments. I would just like to say congratulations for a first event.
Thank you. Yeah, you mentioned Joe's name. I'm gonna rather than go into the roundtable discussion, I'm gonna get Joe to they had the Lake Gibson Corridor group had a booth set up at the event. So I'm going to call on Joe to provide the committee some kind of an insight as to what they got out of the event.
Well, we had quite a number of people stop by, and we were what we put together as a lot of the things was put together more or less at the last minute, but a little bit of a brochure, some maps showing the area that was involved. Almost everybody who stopped by our booth or our table was aware, of course, of the one park there, the Belshore Park, but didn't realize how far everything went back all the way to the canal, the trails, down to Allenburg, and in the other direction off to Morning Star Mill. And so we had a lot of people that were, oh, I didn't realize all those things were connected.
Mhm.
And we had a lot of positive response and zero negative response that I saw. I was helping man the booth for about half the time, and yeah, the only, like everybody else pretty much has said, the only way that it could have been significantly better from our point of view would have been if there were more people to hand out our maps to and whatnot, and to talk to about the potential for um, some kind of a conservation park, whatever we can manage to get in that area. That's about it. So
Yeah, okay, thank you. Yeah, and I think there is going to be something coming. There was a side issue that it looks like the city's going to participate in reaching out to the MPCA and move forward with the mapping. I understand Minaj is going to be on board with that. So hopefully we can find out when a meeting is going to be set up, and the Lake Gibson Corridor Community Liaison Group can get going to see what kind of development we can get working with the MPCA on the mapping process, and hopefully lead to the designation of a provincial park for that area. So it was good. It was good. Great. Linda, comment again.
A question for Joe. Is the Lake Gibson Corridor Group going to have a booth at the market this summer? Because that's where you will find some more supporters. You already have some because of the Earth Day. Advocate, if they agree with you, they're advocates for your project and for the project. And maybe if you went to the market, if you had the time, if the committee members had the time to man a booth there, it would be productive for more to gain more advocates, because people seem to be in agreement with your project.
Yeah. Go ahead, Joe.
oh no, I was just going to say it's a good idea, but frankly not something that we'd considered at this point. I know Fred quite often has been at things like the market. I forget whether he was actually there before. Just sort of friends of Lake Gib. What's the one that he's on?
Mel Swart.
Yeah, friends of Mel Schwart. But it's something that I'm sure we'll discuss at our next Lake Gibson meeting.
Yeah, I was pondering that myself, and I can talk about that. I thought, I mean, I hope we're not digressing. This is still the Earth Day event that we're supposed to be talking about. But what Linda says, Niagara Geopark was at the market last year, and that's where I ran into Darren. It was the first time I spoke with them. So they had a table set up. I maybe just the one time I think he did. Another advocate group out of Pelham, I believe there is 8 Trees. They had a group. I'm not too sure exactly what they do. There's adult programs and youth programs, I think, in that organization. But it would be something for the Environment Committee to also consider, along with the Lake Gibson group, to put together some kind of a table at the market just to try to advocate a bit, because we saw what we got at the Earth Day event, that maybe we need to have another approach to let people know that we exist and to spread the word in some way. So comments on that, Linda?
Heritage is looking at doing that for the summer as well. Yeah.
Okay, any other further discussion on the Earth Day event? Mark?
Yeah, just on the Earth Day event, picking up where Leslie started 20 minutes ago, which is essentially, are we going to do a postmortem, so to speak, lessons learned from the Earth Day event so that we have a number of items identified and timeframes identified as how to do it better for next year?
Yeah,
And if
I would
so,
say,
sorry.
sure, Mark. Leslie and I were, I guess we were part of a working group and we were working with Jason. So I would suggest that, we can move forward with that. And if there's anybody else that, does want to come on board, they're more than welcome. I'm going to go over to Justin. Justin has his hand up.
Yeah, so my thought was that the working group would end, but if you want to continue it right now, that's perfectly fine. Or you can end it now and then restart it in a couple months. But if you want to talk about postmortem and so on, we can just keep it running. We'll just keep it on the agenda moving forward. And then if we don't really have updates for every meeting, we can just note that, and that's no problem.
Okay, no, that's a good suggestion. Okay, any other comments on that? Seeing none, item 7.2.
Mr. Chair, Jacob has his hand up.
Oh, I'm sorry. Jacob, go ahead.
Okay, I was just looking at the calendar for next year. Kind of if Earth Day falling around the same April 22nd, the 19th might be a good day to suggest for hosting an event next year. If you did want to make a suggestion that we do this again.
Yeah, because most people, like most organizations, there's some that do hold it right on the Earth Day, and there's a lot of organizations that hold it on the third Saturday of the month, knowing that there's a better opportunity for participation from the local community. And that's why when I made my original motion to the city of Thorold, I put forward that the city host an Earth Day on the Earth Day event on the third Saturday of April going forward, and that seems to be, I think, what we might want to do going forward. Comments, Leslie?
That makes sense.
Yeah.
All organizations are vying for Saturdays from February on, so the earliest in the month really does make a little bit of a difference. Yeah, for sure.
Okay. Yeah, great. Yeah, I agree. Okay. Any other comments on the Earth Day? We can move on now.
So is there a competition then?
What was
Like
the date
people want to
again?
go to multiple Earth Days and now they can only choose which one they can go to? Like, do people do it on the Saturday after or the Sunday?
I didn't hear the question.
Oh, sorry. If everyone's holding Earth Day events on the Saturday, then there's competition. If you wanted to go to St. Catherine's Earth Day and you wanted to go to Thorold's Earth Day.
You're right.
Yeah.
So
Would be.
does anyone go the Saturday after Earth Day? Or
That's a
Sunday?
good question.
I don't know.
I
Like
know. I
a
know
lot of people
Sweetie
participate in
Saturday.
those cleanups, so I guess you just have a set number of people all going on the same day, which is good to raise awareness, right? I mean, that's how it's supposed to work.
Yeah.
But I don't know if you thought people would want to go to multiple Earth Days. That's just a thought.
Leslie?
I can tell you that if you are doing a bazaar or something like that in Thorold, the earliest you open, you get the most people. They all go to other ones during the day, but we learned that we will have people lined up at seniors parking lot waiting to get in before it opens because we're the first one. And it goes for dates as well. I would not worry about St. Catherine's. I don't know how they're organizing theirs, but I do know that their participation from their horticulture group over COVID has gone from 85 to 100 to 19 people. So the audience in St. Catherine's is not what it used to be right now, and we should take advantage of that and get the first date that we can in the month that people are, the only thing they're going to be talking about is Earth Day.
Okay. Great. Any other comments? Jacob?
Yeah, just looking at the schedule for next year. If you want, I can also discuss with Canada Games what dates they would have available, because I believe there was a few recommendations to move the event to Canada Games Park for next year. And then also some talk about also jointly hosting it possibly with St. Catharines up at that facility. So I think if we did look to go to Canada Games, I could check just to see when their ice out schedule is. Seeing if Brock might be going late in the season that year. And then also if we want to work on it with St. Catharines up at that facility, then we could probably capture both audiences. And overall, I think it would be great for the event to be jointly marketed between both Thorold and St. Catharines as a hosted event together, possibly.
Okay. We've got opportunities to have discussions on how we want to proceed now. Okay, Linda, you've got your hand up.
Oh, I was just going to make a motion that we proceed to recommend April the 19th as a designated day for an Earth Day event, and that Jacob find out if the Canada Games Park is available at that time. I think before the 22nd is better than after, because people are aware that the 22nd is coming up. There are advertisements that Earth Day will be soon, and so we could do it before the 22nd as opposed to after.
Well, if you go with what Helen is suggesting, I mean, the weekend before, we could choose Sunday to hold the event if that's what is a possibility in terms of not hosting it on the same day as surrounding communities. So that can be part of our discussion going forward if that is an option.
Yeah, so I move that we explore the dates before. If the dates aren't satisfactory before, because the park is already booked or whatever, then after, either before or after would be effective, and people would look towards the events, because you already have 100 advocates that are pleased with the events, and so you'll have more advocates once you sponsor a second event.
Okay, thanks. Justin.
Yeah, just a recommendation to the committee that I think Jacob can just take this as staff direction, and I don't think a motion is necessary at this point.
Okay, that's fine. That's fine.
Yeah, okay. Okay, I think we've pretty well covered enough of that, gotten a lot of points to discuss, and moving forward with the working group later on, we'll get the ball rolling. Okay, let's go to item 7.2, Partners for Climate Protection Program. I'm gonna go with Mark on this. We did have a group meeting before, but let's just see what Mark's got lined up. There will be a presentation to council, I believe, May 28th meeting. The PCP people will be addressing council. So I'm going to go with Mark for an update on where we stand.
Sure, thanks, Joe. Well, I think that we'll start by continuing our conversation from our last session, which was our interest in putting forward a motion. So we do have a motion to provide findings to Thorold City Council, and the wording that we have come up with. I believe Jason has a copy of this, but I'll say it out loud. So the proposed motion is, whereas the ECBAC Advisory Committee welcomes public input, and we want to thank the delegate for bringing forward her concerns. And whereas the ECBAC Committee's PCP working group unanimously agreed that the source of information referenced in the presentation lack credibility and the claims made are false, flawed, or at best misleading. And as a result, be it resolved that the ECBAC the ECBAC support the city's continued participation in the Federation of Canadian Municipalities Partners for Climate Protection Program, and that the ECBAC recommends that City Council approve the city's membership in the FCM PCP program. So, oh, there you got it. So I'll propose this motion. Do we need a seconder?
I'll second it.
Justin, we're good?
Sorry, Borland seconded.
Yeah.
And then if the chair would like to call the vote.
Okay, I'll call the question now. All those in favor? Opposed, if any? And that is carried. Very good. Okay, Justin?
Yes, and just to provide the committee with a timeline, so you know, so as the chair pointed out, May 28th right now is the planned PCP program presentation. And then the meeting after that, June 18th, is when we should hopefully be expecting a staff report, which was asked from council 3 months from the date in February. And with that report, or attached with that report, will be this motion. So I just want to make sure that everyone knows that you won't see it in the coming May meetings. It'll be in June, so that it's all in one together. So we have it all together, just so everyone knows.
Okay, so we're probably going to be about July before anything comes up on our agenda.
Yeah, so you'll see the May 28th presentation. That'll come up, and anyone can watch, of course, and we can have an update about that. And then it'll be in the June meeting on the 18th is when we expect a staff report, and then this motion will go with it. So it's all together.
Okay. Our committee doesn't have a meeting scheduled for June, but we may want to consider one just so we can get an update of how the presentation went.
Sure, and I can after the presentation, I can forward the link to everyone too, if they wish, and they can watch it.
Okay, great. Mark, you got your hand up.
Yes, so just a question through you, Mr. Chair, to Justin. Just to confirm, will the city also be passing a motion or raising a motion at that time to support continued involvement in the program on the June 18th date?
So from what I understand is June 18th, we should be expecting a staff report about the program. I'm not certain what exactly the report will say, but I'm going to imagine, you know, what we've been in, what we gotten out of it. It may have a recommendation. I'm not certain what it will say. And then with that, we will have this committee's motion exactly that we just passed, saying, well, this is what the committee thinks. I'm not sure exactly what the staff report will say at this point. I don't know.
Okay, so it may or may not happen on that date.
Yeah, so you never know. I would never guess what council will do, of course, but June 18th possibly will make a decision, but I can't speak for them.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Any other comments or questions for Mark on this? Just a waiting game until we get something in the middle of June. Okay, great. Item 7.3, boulevard planting. There's something I gotta raise here, and I didn't intentionally leave you out of this conversation that I had a while back. It was a very short notice with Kelly Liddycoat from Boccia Finuso Funeral Home to meet with her on a Tuesday morning at 9 o'clock, and I only got a day's notice. I know, Leslie, you really don't like to start at 9 o'clock. So I had met with Kelly and Heather Swan, and Kelly wants to do some boulevard planting on her property. And where she's looking at is the west side of the funeral home property, which runs parallel to Front Street. And she wants to put in flower beds on from the sidewalk to where she's got a wrought iron fence. And she's been in touch with the city over this Public Works Department, and it's very convoluted what they're looking at or doing. So when I talked to Kelly, I said, just put this on hold because we're looking at having some kind of a boulevard planting bylaw with the city that will allow something like this to happen. So I says, Leslie Daniels has a lot of documentation on this, and we need to set up, get a working group going so we can get something going forward with the city that will allow you to move forward. Right now, what they're asking her to do, there's an occupancy permit they want her to fill out, and there's no guidelines for what would be planted or anything. So I think what Leslie and I may need to do is set up a meeting with the Public Works Department to see. Yeah, I know, it's
Not
like
yet. We're not at that point yet. But we need to set up a group where we can sit down at the table and they can look through all the resources that I have about municipal bylaws across Ontario. Once
Right.
we've done that, we can pick out what we want, and it should be a quick process. But right now, anyone that plants on the boulevard are doing something illegal in Thorold because there isn't a bylaw. So, and lots of people have done it, and Thorold's not coming and digging them up, but they need to know that, because if they plant the wrong type of plant material, the city will have a say, because the bylaw is going to address that.
Yeah, there are some that are a little bit unruly. And just here's something that just caught my eye yesterday. I was out working in my yard, and there was a bylaw officer came by and parked over on Carlton Street across the street from Portland. And the bylaw officer got out and walked to the intersection, looking down Portland towards Beaver Dams Park, and started taking some pictures. And then got into the car and drove down to the house on the corner. I'm sure, Leslie, you know which one I might be talking about, the corner of Portland and Ormond, and the yard is rather unruly. And right now, the grass on the boulevard is probably, I'm going to say, about 18 inches. So I suspect that this person is going to get notification to address that issue. So if they're driving around looking at unruly grass, they may approach some of these houses where the boulevards are just a little out of hand. So I think it's something that we need to move forward with quite quickly. Helen, you got your hand up?
So I just wanted some clarification when you say boulevard planting, like planting of what? Like flowers or
Yes,
trees or shrubs or what?
that's what has to be identified.
Okay, so right now you're only supposed to plant grass?
You're not supposed to plant anything. It's city property.
Right.
So right now, Welland Street is the best example in Thorold. And most of the boulevard all the way down on both sides of the street are planted.
I know, I live on Welland.
Yeah.
It's beautiful.
It is beautiful. And we use that as an example of how beautiful it can be. And
Right, okay.
there are so many more homeowners that would like some solid information, like a fact sheet or something that says which plants, how many seasons you should be planting for, how high they can be, what color they should be. They need that direction, and the only way to do it is through a boulevard, a bylaw that allows the planting and also sets up all these parameters for them. But right now, everything on Welland Avenue is illegal.
Okay, so I probably want to be on that working group if you're looking
Oh,
for more
yay.
people.
Great, good. Yeah, we could use
Okay,
you.
thanks for the clarification.
Mark, you've got your hand up.
Yeah, again, just looking for clarification. Are you saying that there currently is a bylaw prohibiting anything, or are you saying there is no bylaw?
I'm saying there is no bylaw, therefore, because it's city property, it's illegal.
It would fall under,
Pardon?
it would fall under like the Clean Yards Act. So if you have an unruly, like if you don't cut your grass, uh, and it gets over a certain height, the city can, give you notice with a time frame to cut it. And if you don't meet that time frame, they will come in and take care of it and bill you. And a perfect example is there's one house over on, Chapel. Everybody knows that particular house, and that gentleman had some very nice species of plants on his yard, but it contained a lot of noxious weeds, and the heights exceeded certain limitations. So the city went in a couple of times and cleared it, and now he's got cactus on his boulevard.
I'd ask something else, but I'll let Connor go first because I suspect he might be answering my question.
Okay,
Yeah,
Connor.
so the city has a clean yards bylaw, which basically says on private land you can't have any grass or turf grass or weeds above 20 centimeters. So that pertains to the private lands. I think that's kind of what Leslie was getting at, that it's not necessarily for the city-owned lands that are on the boulevards. Just another item for people that are curious. I used to live in Guelph, and I know they have some really good resources, fact sheets for if you have a boulevard that's in shade or a boulevard that's in sun, different species you can plant.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I hear what you're saying, and I think right now what we have is just for private lands, and that's probably a gap for city-owned lands.
One of the issues that the city would probably raise is there's a lot of utilities that are buried in the boulevard and require access for service or upgrades or improvements. And we've had our boulevards planted now since early 90s. And there's been at least 3 or 4 instances where service has been required on our boulevard. And fortunately, the workers that have come down to do the work where they want to do some digging, they will knock on our door and let us know where they want to dig. And they basically ask us if we can remove the plants temporarily while they work. And then after they're finished working, we replant. And most recently, when Bell was going through the neighborhood last year where they were digging for the fiber optics that they're burying, I had to, there was quite a few spots in the boulevard where I had to remove stuff. And when you work with these guys, they're pretty good. They worked quite well around the plants and minimized any damage they did. But that's what you have to keep in mind if you are going to be planting on the boulevard. There could be a time when there could be some service work come along, and therefore you want to be careful what you plant. And it's not something that's extremely valuable, that it's just something that you want some color or beautification that can survive in the various conditions that that being that close to the road can offer. Connor, you got your hand up.
Yeah, so to date, what we've been doing in the few instances where people have asked to plant the city boulevard is that's the main goal of the occupancy permit. So basically the individual assigns an occupancy permit that for work within the municipal right of way, and then there's conditions attached that, for example, if the city needs to do any work in that boulevard, that it would be at the cost of the owner to replant. So there could be any damages, and then basically the city wouldn't be responsible for replanting any
Right.
plants that were there before.
Yeah. Okay.
Other items that the city imposed were, for example, the sight lines. So I think it's the 20 centimeters again would apply just to maintain sight lines, and that any maintenance would be at the cost of the owner. So that's what we've been doing to date. And I know it might be a bit of a barrier for it to get every single person to fill out an occupancy permit, but just to give you an idea of what the city's been doing to date.
Okay, well, it would be nice if we could tie in and get some, some guidelines. Okay, so the 20 centimeter sight line you're talking about, that's the height of the plants, right? A maximum height.
Yeah, that's correct.
Which is fair, because this is what we want to make sure that people understand, that they don't plant something that's going to exceed that height, or they don't plant something that's going to a trail over the curb or spread over onto the sidewalk. So there has to be a list of acceptable plants that you want to have that remain compact and basically require very little maintenance. So this is, I think, what we need to, if the city is making changes, I think we should be part of the group that's going to provide some clarification on what is acceptable and what isn't. And I'm sure Leslie and Helen can probably offer quite a bit. I mean, I've got my own experience. I've gone through a lot of plants that it was trial and error, believe me, but they seem to be holding up now. Okay, Leslie, you got your hand up.
So I have a binder full of photocopied municipal bylaws about the boulevard planting. But in order for us we need to go somewhere and get together so they can look at them and take whichever ones they want us to use out of the pile.
Sure.
Have some sort of review. We can't do it by Zoom. So if we can get a meeting room place, I don't know where we're supposed to meet, but if it's at City Hall, can they give us a room or something?
Yeah, that's what I'd like to see is Justin or Connor. If either one of you can make a suggestion on how we can proceed with this. Justin?
Yeah, so 2 items. One is, I know Helen expressed interest in joining the working group. So when we're ready, we can move and second that she joins it. And if anyone else wants to, we can certainly do that as well. And then, yeah, if you want to facilitate a meeting with staff, yeah, it can be online, it can be in person. Just reach out to the staff members that are needed and something can be set up for sure.
Okay, I think a meeting at City Hall would be appropriate, where we can, like Leslie says, we can spread some materials out on a table and get the conversation going. Okay, so let's go with the motion, I guess, to add Helen to the Boulevard Planting Working Group. Can I have a seconder on that, Linda?
Yeah, sure. I'll move it or second it, whatever you need.
Well, I guess I'm moving the motion by putting it forward. Am I just?
Okay, I'll second.
Technically, you call for the motion, so.
Okay, I'll call for the motion then. That's
So-
Linda's
moved.
calling for, yeah. Can I have a seconder then? I'll second. I'll call the question now. All those in favor? Opposed, if any? Great, welcome aboard. We need you. So then we'll work at setting something up. Would we be, Justin, would we start with Connor, or who do we have the first meeting with?
I'll ask Connor that.
Okay,
Yeah, so right now the occupancy permits are through Public Works, so I think someone in Public Works would be the best person to start with.
okay. Can you give us a contact that we would be looking at?
I think Jeff's been involved in this committee, so maybe that would be a good person to start with, and then he could delegate as he sees fit as well.
Okay,
He actually suggested it. So yeah, good move.
okay. Any other comments or questions on the Boulevard planting? Looks like we've covered that pretty good. Item 7.4, committee long-term goals. How do we want to proceed on this? Do we want to have just discussions in our meetings with this, or do we want to create a working group that would compile a list of, say, items that we want to have for our long-term goals and then bring them back to the committee for approval? Which way do we want to go on this? Mark, you got your hand up?
Yeah, I thought we had already organized a working group for this topic. But let me just circle back for a second and go back to the Earth Day event where we were trying to solicit some input. So I'd like to just quickly talk about that. Solicit some input on what members of the public want from the committee. So unfortunately, I got sick right before the Earth Day event, so I couldn't attend. I did set up a display there and got very limited input. But the input that I did get was consistent with all the priorities that we had proposed in terms of things to do to mitigate climate change, adapt to climate change, and address biodiversity loss. So that's good. In terms of the comments that were made, it was specific to having us focus on boulevard gardens and both private as well as public, focusing on native plants, along with the associated bylaws requiring us or residents to naturalize yards. So I think that's getting a little bit outside of the discussion about boulevard gardens. But that's something else that we need to incorporate into our objectives. And I'm assuming that means pollinator gardens and things like that, not necessarily on the boulevard, but being able to do that, which based on what Connor was saying about the current laws, that's going to be a bit of a problem. So just wanted to raise that to say that we did get some input from that Earth Day session. In terms of how to go forward, yeah, I thought we had set up a working group, but we didn't have time to really meet. So I was wondering if we could change the membership of that working group so that we have people that have time to meet on it.
Okay, Justin?
So yes, a working group has been formed, and it is with Joe, Leslie, and Mark.
Okay.
So you're on it, Joe. You just forgot.
It's been the past couple of months have been a blur. Yeah, and it's not letting up. Okay.
Right. So I do have time, Joe, to go forward and set up some meetings and lead those meetings if that's what's required. But I think we need some other participation in the working group.
Okay.
Looks like Helen has her hand up.
Yeah, I'd be interested on being on that working group as well. I did do a survey, so I have ideas on some of these things as well that have come in.
Excellent.
The new things that I didn't see addressed would be invasive species. So that's something, I mean, when we talk about boulevard plantings, you can have a list of invasives you're not allowed to plant, that type of thing. So so that's just sort of something that I'll probably work in with naturalization and our other objectives. But
Yeah,
I just want to bring that one up just because I'll be bringing it up at the working group.
Okay, great. Justin.
Yes, thank you. Through the chair, 2 items. You can have 2 more members to this group, assuming the current membership doesn't change. And it was brought up about a recommendation on how to proceed. I would recommend the working group sit down, come together, come up with maybe a short list of what they think, and then we can bring it back to this committee to move forward, because it'll be a lot of discussion. So it's probably best for the working group to tackle that.
Yeah, okay. Linda.
I'll be part of that.
Okay, so we got 2 members coming forward. So that's a motion for that, Justin? That
yeah.
Okay. Can I get a motion? The motion to add Helen and Linda to the committee long-term goals working group. And that is moved by Mark and a seconder. And that's Leslie. I'll call the question. All those in favor? Opposed, if any? And that's carried. Okay, very good. Okay, Leslie?
I was just gonna make a suggestion. The couple of issues, and interests that Helen raised, as prior, to go into our list. I'd like to see them discussed under the boulevard planting and that bylaw. For one reason, let's not reinvent the wheel. And when we get together, one of the things we're going to do is do a list of plants that are allowable on the boulevard. We should extend that to people's property, because the people that are sent out to take down things don't necessarily know what's being taken down if they can't talk to the homeowner. And if there was a list that easily people would think of when they're talking about that, or they're going out to look at different properties, I think it would make their job easier and make the homeowner's job easier if we produce something like that. So I was just wondering if those two things could be combined as issues that we deal with the boulevard planting committee.
Yeah. Yeah. Mark, you got your hand up.
Yeah, through you, Mr. Chair. So, Leslie, I don't argue that point, but I'm just not sure if there could be a different set of rules in terms of what's allowed to be planted if it's on private property. I mean, it depends, right? If you're boulevard, I get it's right on the road, but if you're doing something in your backyard and you want to have a 3 or 4 foot pollinator garden, there shouldn't be any reason why not to have that.
I thought they were talking about the front garden.
Well, but so you're right. There is discussions also on front yards, and not having grass on front yards. So that is something we have to talk about. And I think it's, so I'm not arguing. I'm saying we'd have to understand what you're saying for boulevard planting, but could it be different for yards, front or back? I don't know. So we'd want to keep it in both, I think.
I don't think we have an option on backyard. We do between properties, and we do front yards that would the plants would be on the sidewalk, causing a problem for people walking back and forth and danger.
Understood. Yeah, understood.
But I think if we're going to tackle these issues, we need to keep them as together as possible. So we don't say one thing in one recommendation and another thing in another recommendation. It was just for simplicity, having them identified that way.
Okay.
I think Connor has a comment.
Okay, he's on screen again now. He drops off on mine. Connor, go ahead.
Yeah, thanks, Joe. Just wanted to note, so in that Clean Yards bylaw that the city has, there is a definition of noxious weeds, so this applies to private lands, and the regulating of certain plants has to be under the noxious weeds. So it's actually a weed control act, and if the city can introduce a bylaw, they'd be allowed to introduce a bylaw that adds more weeds to that list, but it is regulated under the Weed Control Act.
Is that for front gardens or back gardens? Are they walking into people's property and taking pictures? We have a contest that we run every year, and during the summer. And one of the reasons we're going with photos of gardens is because we cannot walk onto private property, so we can't look at backyard gardens. Other people can and take pictures, but we can't.
Yeah, so because it's a bylaw, it allows the bylaw enforcement to enforce it just as any other bylaw. So they are allowed to enter private property, but basically how it's regulated is through the Clean Yards Act for private property, and the certain list of weeds that are on that I guess that are regulated have to be compliant with the Weed Control Act. It's just a little, I guess, a little bit complicated, but just wanted to make that point.
Okay, so a bylaw officer going into a backyard would be following up on a complaint, right?
That's right.
They're not gonna be proactive, they're gonna be reactive, but a front yard is different. I suspect that I've known of instances in other cities where the city has gone in and people have had really nice gardens in their front yard that they've put a lot of time and effort into, providing food sources for butterflies and bees and that. And in London, there was one example I follow on Instagram, and the city they gave her notice that she was in violation, and she was questioning it, and she didn't comply within the time frame, so they came in and cleared it. And I guess I don't know what the end of the story was. There was no follow-up in the London newspaper, but it was kind of heart-wrenching to see what happened to this girl's yard. And it's happened in other cities too, so we know it's quite aware. So I guess we really have to look at the bylaw and how we can work with it so that we're making sure that there's no reason for the city to go in because there could be an invasive species, or a noxious species, or a dangerous species that are being identified in our area lately. Leslie?
There was a Grow Me Instead little bookmark thing that was put together by a nonprofit in Ontario. It's since given away everything that they produce. So OHA is working on invasive species and native species to come out with something for the public. So it's not that easy a job to say to a bylaw officer, oh, by the way, these things you need to go and check for these particular plants. There's identification, there's all sorts of problems. As horticulturists, we realize that it's a real difficult situation. But I've heard horror stories like that many, many times. But we also reported one, which led to blooming the boulevards. On Chapel Street, my husband was walking our miniature Australian Shepherd, Bailey. And there was a house that the people had moved out. I think they were going to sell, but they weren't living in it. And they had planted their boulevard and their front yard. And when he went by, they had cactus. We do have cactus that can overwinter, much as that surprises people. I threw out one years ago, and Alan ended up burying it because he was worried about the animals running into it. When he went past this house a number of times, he told me, and I contacted Jeff, and I said to him, is this legal? Do you not have a list? Do you not know that this is a danger? And if it's going on to city, or it's planted on city property and on the sidewalk, and you don't do something about it, and somebody falls or is, severely hurt by this plant, you haven't done due diligence because you don't have a bylaw. You've been notified that this exists. So it's something that's really necessary right now for all sorts of reasons. And there are people working on the issues that we're talking about that we can take advantage of the work they're doing in order to make our job a little bit easier and more inclusive provincially.
Yeah, okay. Okay, we got our work cut out for us on this one. But there is interest. There is definitely interest. Mark?
Yeah, and I'll just say when we talk about our objectives, we got to start high level. we're right down in the literal weeds, pun intended. So let's start high level and talk about things, and then we'll have to go focus on pick 3 items that are the most important to us, and then get into all those details.
Yeah, very good. Any other comments on committee long-term goals? Okay, let's go to roundtable discussion. Oh, Connor, you got your hand up?
Sorry, yeah, I just wanted to I guess not make more work for anybody, but I know the committee was discussing potentially community gardens on city property. We never had a formal request to look into that, so that might be something just not to lose sight of. I think that was a really good idea, and maybe a goal for the upcoming year.
Yeah, thanks for raising that, Connor, because it'll be something that will stay. Unfortunately, Niagara Community Gardens wasn't able to participate in the Earth Day event. Aaron indicated, I think, about a week or 2 before that they didn't have a backup to participate, and it would have been great to have them at the event. Basically, it was to get some, community input, community feedback on what community gardens is all about. So unfortunately, this changes, I think, the strategy that this committee is going to have on trying to move that forward. Maybe if I reach out to her, we may have an opportunity to get her to come down to the market sometime during the summer and have a table set up so that people can see what is there and how we can get people on board, working with municipal property and maybe some private property organizations too that might want to set up groups. Leslie.
So you probably are not aware that the city, the Niagara Catholic Board, and Monsignor Clancy have been looking at this issue since before COVID. It got stopped at COVID, and they brought together the group, and I was part of it, to determine what to do with that block of land on Monsignor Clancy property, the corner of Sullivan and
Collier.
Yeah. And one of the specifications in order to move forward was that we had to get the school board to agree to at least be part of our support for 2 years, because even if we got everything ready and started to do something on the property, it still would take another year before the plants were up and we could deal with them. But the major problem was that they wanted to do either a community garden or a pollinator garden. And I pointed out, you're talking apples and oranges, they're both great ideas. However, on private property, such as the school board property, they would not be letting the people that would use a community garden onto their property unless somebody was there and unlocked a gate and let them in and let them out and so on. So I told them they needed to go back and find a city piece of property that they could then develop a community garden in. So that part has already been done. I don't know whether there's been any work on it since COVID, but that was where we left it. The pollinator garden could be used as a teaching for the kids in that school, because now it goes from junior kindergarten to grade 8, and we have not gone forward. But what I would suggest is we talk to Jeff, who was on that committee with me, and ask him where they are right now. Are they willing to start again? And we send somebody to that meeting, because they're the ones that are going to determine the legality of whatever the city comes up with. And that gives us a role on either the community garden or the pollinator garden for that one specific property, but also to a community garden that the city may identify as a piece of land where they could build their own.
Sure. Yeah, that's a good idea. Yeah, no, we should, that would be a great idea to collaborate and move forward in that sense. If some of the groundwork has already been started, pick up where where it was left off. Okay. Any other discussion on that? Okay. Item 8, roundtable discussion. Gonna start with you, Linda. Anything for roundtable?
Not today.
Okay. Go down to Helen. Anything for roundtable?
No, I think I'm good.
Okay, great. Let's go down to Ramble and Joe. Great. Okay, Mark, anything for roundtable? Oh, okay. Jacob, anything for roundtable?
Just to let everyone know, I did ask Canada Games if the 19th or 20th in April next year would be available. He said it should be available next year, so I'll ask him to hold those dates for now.
Okay.
If that's kind of the dates we're looking at. That is also Easter weekend, just in case we didn't realize that before. But he said that's not the weekend that the home show typically has their event there, so it should be available.
Okay,
So I'll just ask for a hold on those for now.
great. Yeah. Leslie, anything for roundtable?
I'll put on my other hat. The seniors are holding a high tea the day before Mother's Day at the facility as a fundraiser. We've done a number of them. So far, they've been well attended. And there's information out there for anyone that's interested, but it is a nice event. Other than that, we have a lot of things like our Tree of Life ceremony and other things for horticulture, but nothing specific for the general public.
Okay. And I don't have anything to add for the roundtable. So we'll go for adjournment. There being no further business. Wait a minute. The next meeting is scheduled for July 5th. That's our regularly scheduled meeting. But I would think that we may be having a meeting in June on the 7th, possibly getting an update on the presentation that council is going to get from the people from PCP to get council to understand what is involved in this this program. So keep the date open. That would be June 7th. That we'll probably have a meeting. There probably won't be too much else on the agenda. There could maybe be some committee updates depending on if we've had some meetings to report on. But having said that, Leslie?
Do we need a motion to confirm that date or that weekend that we're interested in for Earth Day next
Earth Day? Justin?
Well, I think at this point it's still up in the air if you want to be doing it or not. So I think just having him hold it and then the group can kind of discuss and go from there at this point.
Yeah, because as I said when I made the motion, when I did the presentation to council back in August, and the proposal was that the event would be held on the third Saturday of April. So that's, you know, going forward, it would always be on the third Saturday of April, unless we decide we want to move away from that and possibly float to a Sunday or Saturday, depending on how the discussion goes with that.
So does that mean that we have the ability to start drawing up a flyer with that date on it, whatever date we come up with? That won't be a problem if we pick one of those dates in that weekend.
That would be for Justin to answer. I think that's kind of questionable right now.
So my understanding right now is that Earth Day is technically a city-run event run by staff, obviously with this committee's input. So it would be up to the community services team to pick what date they're picking, obviously with input from this group, of course. But I don't think we've firmed up the date at this moment. We've held the dates, and I would suggest the working group maybe just talk about it and see if they do
Did, did, did Justin just freeze up?
Yeah. Okay. Well, you still there, Justin?
I think we lost him.
Okay, yeah, we know that because this will be a city-run event through staff, there probably will come a point in time when it will be a regular event. And at any time, it will be part of, I guess, a budgetary expense, so to speak. Right now, we're still I don't think we're at that stage yet.
Sorry, I just dropped out. What I missed.
Well, we didn't get the last of your comment. You froze.
Sorry, where was I? I was suggesting that maybe wait for now, and you might want to contact possible partner of St. Catharines, and just the committee can talk about it.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. Yes, adjournment. There being no further business, and I did say keep June 7th open because we may have a meeting just to do an update on the PCP. Okay, this meeting is adjourned at 11:27. And have a nice weekend, everybody. Bye for now.